It's 11 p.m. You're lying in bed, and out of nowhere, a conversation from 3 days ago starts playing again. Not the whole thing, just one line, something they said, or something you said, and now you're not sure it landed right. You didn't ask for this. You weren't even thinking about them 5 minutes ago, but now you're replaying the tone of their voice, the exact words, the pause before they answered, and you start rewriting it. What you should have said instead, what it probably meant, whether it meant anything at all. Maybe it's a coworker, a text that got left unread for 6 hours, a friend who seemed a little quieter than usual, an old argument with a parent that technically ended years ago but somehow never actually finished. Different situation, same feeling. The conversation ended, but somewhere in your head it's still open, still running. And here's the strange part. It doesn't matter how confident you are. It doesn't matter how many times people tell you, just let it go. This happens to almost everyone, which means it's probably not a personal flaw. It's something your brain is built to do. And once you understand why, the whole thing starts to make a different kind of sense. In 1927, a psychologist named Bluma Zeigarnik was sitting in a cafe in Vienna. She noticed something odd about the waiters. They could remember incredibly complicated orders. 10 different dishes, 10 different tables, no notepad, but the moment an order was paid for, it vanished from their memory completely. Ask a waiter about a table they served an hour ago after the bill was settled and they draw a blank. Ask them about an order that was still open, still unpaid, and they could recite it perfectly. Zeigarnik took that observation into a lab. She had people complete a series of small tasks, puzzles, simple problems, little assignments, but she interrupted them halfway through some of the tasks and let them finish others completely. Later, she asked everyone to recall what they'd worked on. The finished tasks faded fast. The interrupted ones stayed vivid. People remembered the unfinished business almost twice as well as the finished business. This became known as the Zeigarnik effect. Your brain holds on to open loops, and it lets go of closed ones, not because open loops are more important, but because your brain treats unfinished as a kind of alarm that isn't allowed to turn off yet. Later, researchers ran the experiment again and again in different forms with different tasks. The effect wasn't perfectly consistent every single time. Real memory research rarely is, but the core pattern held up across decades of follow-up work. Unfinished business occupies mental space in a way that finished business simply doesn't. Your mind is built to keep a running list of loose ends, not because it enjoys torturing you, but because a loose end is, by definition, a piece of unfinished information, and unfinished information might still require action. Now here's where it gets personal. A conversation isn't just words to your brain, it's a task. An exchange with a beginning, a middle, and an expected resolution. Most conversations resolve themselves without you noticing. Someone says something, you respond, the meaning lands, both of you move on. The loop closes quietly, and your brain deletes the file. But some conversations don't close. Maybe you didn't get to say what you meant. Maybe their reaction confused you. Maybe there was a flicker of tension, and neither of you addressed it directly. Maybe you just don't know how they felt when they walked away. To your conscious mind, the conversation is over. You said goodbye, you both went home, but to the part of your brain that tracks social information, nothing closed. The file is still open, and an open file doesn't sit quietly in a folder somewhere. It keeps signaling. That's the replay. It's not you overthinking on purpose. It's an unfinished task alarm going off in a part of your brain that doesn't speak in words, only in pressure. But this raises a real question. Why would a brain evolve to work this way? Why would unresolved conversations get flagged as urgent when unresolved crossword puzzles clearly don't keep most people up at night? The answer goes back a lot further than cafes and psychology labs. For most of human history, you didn't survive alone. You survived inside a small group. 50 people, maybe 100, who you depended on for food, protection, and information. In a group that size, your standing with other people wasn't a soft, emotional thing. It was a survival resource. If someone were annoyed with you and you didn't know it, that mattered. If a friendship quietly cooled and you missed the signal, that mattered. Being pushed out of the group, even a little, could mean less food, less protection, less warning about danger. So your ancestors' brains developed a very specific kind of alarm system, one built to detect unresolved social risk, a tense conversation, an ambiguous reaction, a joke that maybe didn't land. Each of these could be an early warning sign of a bigger problem, a shift in the group's opinion of you, a conflict that hadn't been settled yet. And the brain's answer to an unresolved threat has never been forget about it. The brain's answer is keep this active until it's resolved. That's not a bug. That's the exact same system that kept your ancestors scanning the tree line for a predator that hadn't been seen in an hour, but hadn't been ruled out either. Unresolved conflict was treated as unfinished threat assessment, and that circuitry didn't get an update when conversations moved from campfires to text messages. Picture one of your ancestors after a tense exchange with someone in the tribe, maybe a disagreement over how to split the meat from a hunt. They can't just message that person later and ask, "Hey, are we okay?" There's no way to check in privately, no way to smooth it over with a quick apology sent from a distance. The only information they have is what happened and the uncertainty of not knowing how it landed. So the brain does the only thing it can do with that uncertainty. It keeps the moment active. This is also why the replay loop almost never picks pleasant conversations. You don't usually lie awake replaying the compliment someone gave you at lunch. You replay the comment that landed wrong. The silence that lasted half a second too long. The message that got left on read, that's not a coincidence either. Your brain has a well-documented bias toward negative information because across your evolutionary history, missing a threat was far more costly than missing a reward. A missed opportunity cost you a meal. A missed threat could cost you your life or your place in the group. So your attention system is tuned to grab onto anything that might signal danger, and social friction reads as exactly that kind of signal. Combine that with the Zeigarnik effect, and you get a very specific kind of loop. An unresolved moment, flagged as important because it might be a threat that your brain refuses to file away until it feels resolved. Modern communication makes this worse, not better. For most of human history, if something felt off with another person, you were usually still standing in front of them. You could watch their face change. You could ask right there, "Wait, are you upset today?" An unresolved moment can just hang there. A read receipt with no reply. A message that ends the conversation mid-thread with no clear signal of how the other person feels. A video call that drops before either of you really finish the thought. Every one of those gives your threat detection system exactly what it hates most: ambiguity, with no way to check it against reality. So it does what it's always done with ambiguity. It keeps running the scenario, hoping that one more pass will produce the missing information. It never does. But the system doesn't know that yet. Here's the part that trips most people up. Replaying the conversation feels like it should help. It feels productive, like you're solving something. But replaying isn't the same as resolving. Your brain doesn't distinguish very well between rehearsing a real conversation and rehearsing an imagined one. So when you lie there constructing the version where you said the perfect thing or imagining their side of it, you're not closing the loop. You're running simulations. And every simulation just confirms to your nervous system that the situation is still active, still unresolved, still worth flagging. That's why the replay can go on for days. Not because your brain is malfunctioning, but because nothing you're doing in your head actually resembles the one thing that would close the loop, which is new information from the outside world. A real conversation, an actual resolution, something that tells the alarm system correctly that the threat has passed. This is why two people can go through the exact same awkward exchange, and only one of them gets stuck replaying it. The one who gets an answer, a laugh, a clear "we're fine," gets to close the file immediately. The one who never gets that answer is left holding an open loop with no way to shut it. It has nothing to do with which person is more emotionally resilient. It has everything to do with whether the loop ever got the one thing it was designed to wait for: real, external confirmation. Until that happens, the file stays open. And your brain, the same brain that once had to remember which member of the tribe seemed upset with you, keeps quietly running the same background check it always has. None of this means you're overthinking, or too sensitive, or bad at letting things go. It means you have a functioning threat detection system that was built for a world made of small tribes and permanent proximity, running inside a world of texts, video calls, and people you might see once and never again. The system hasn't changed. The world around it has. So the next time a conversation from days ago shows up uninvited at 11 p.m., you don't have to fight it, and you don't have to believe there's something wrong with you. You can just notice what's actually happening. An old alarm built for an old world, still doing the only job it's ever known how to do, checking to see if you're still safe with your people. If this explains something about yourself you never had words for, that's the whole point of this channel. Why you do that takes one thing your brain quietly decided for you on its own without asking, and actually explains why. If you want the next one, subscribe. I'll see you there.